It seems like awkwardness is relative to where you are. And depending on where you are, your understanding of awkwardness, or maybe I say appreciation or noticing awkwardness is going to change. Is that a good way to think about it?
Absolutely. I think we don't even know if two people agree on whether an interaction was awkward.
Yes.
I think we can kind of watch extreme cases of awkwardness and identify it, but most of us live in the margins most of the time. And I think we don't even know if I felt awkward, you also felt awkward. And we tend to project our own feelings of awkwardness onto other people. And so, even though you have to kind of participate in some way, that doesn't mean you even felt the thing that I thought you participated in. So, there's just a whole bunch of uncertainty around what people are thinking and feeling. But you're making me kind of rethink my work on this. Like, can we even operationalize it in a clear way that everyone would agree? That's awkward. That's not awkward. That's an in between. I actually don't know. But I think it's a fascinating question.
Well, that's the most important thing about your work. The fact that you don't know gives you new work to do. I mean, that's the whole
Yeah,
point of research, right? You
once
never
you know
really
the
know.
answer, life's boring.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. And it's so nuanced because sometimes I'll watch someone be offended with one person doing X, but when another person does X, they're okay with it. It's
Yeah.
almost we've given people different permission levels. And it's not about the act, it's the permission level we've given someone where we allow them to do something, which we then say is normal, but someone else does not have this permission to do the same thing. So the act is important, but it's largely irrelevant when you consider the permission levels because we need to know the permission levels first.
Yeah, I mean, what you just described is almost exactly how we operationalize social status in research on status and hierarchies in the workplace. And so if one person can leave, let's say there's an important meeting of six people in the
Yes.
room. If one person has permission, and I mean that implicitly, to get up and go to the bathroom in the middle of the meeting when the CEO is speaking, um, and they get up and they do it and no one says anything, and then the minute they walk back, someone says, oh, just to let you know what you missed, here's what happened. Another person does the exact same thing. People look at them and say, what, you can't just wait for this to wrap up? That is a marker of status, just being able to do that and not get punished for it. And
Yes.
noticing that is a marker of what we call status acuity, the ability to read a room, to know who has status and who doesn't. And I think, I've learned in my own career that by observing behaviors like that is how you can figure out how important and heard someone is. Little things like who can get up and get coffee in the middle, walk over to the side where the pastries are. Small behaviors like that are huge indicators of status, because you're right, not every behavior, we don't all have the same permissions. And when we do it, we're not all violating the same norm. Me doing it might violate a norm that if you did it would be perfectly acceptable, depending on kind of the rank ordering of the people in the room. And I think that makes it interesting and messy, but you're right.
Yeah, I mean, I have a management consulting background and I used to work around the world. And I very clearly saw the different permission levels in different cultures,
Yeah.
whereby I would be talking to a junior consultant in a very conservative country and they wouldn't make eye contact with me because in
Hmm.
their culture, they
Yeah.
don't make eye contact. And I'm sitting there and saying, as a senior partner, if you want to connect with a client, you've got to make eye contact with them.
Right.
That's not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we never think about those things, how personalized it is.
Yeah, I did some cross national work in Abu Dhabi where people, no one's actually from Abu Dhabi. He lives there.
Yes.
Very few, it's like 10%. And so we did all these kind of cross national interactions where we had people negotiate, and some people, came from Asia, some from Western countries, and those status cues, those kind of embedded tightness, looseness of the culture, eye contact, accent, forward lean, interruptions, speaking time, pitch, tone, all that stuff was super fascinating to study, because, most organizations now are international and you have to have these kinds of one-on-one meetings all the time. And if your status cues are different, if what's considered culturally acceptable is different, you can offend people. You can not get deals. You can, really isolate, the office that is in a different country if you're not careful. But we don't get training on that stuff. I think people are so worried about stereotyping and things like that they
Yes.
don't do any kind of, or they call it cultural sensitivity training, but that doesn't exactly work. It's like a lack of knowledge around acceptability and permission. And I wish we use that language more when
Yes.
describing these things.
It's also really hard to know how to respond to every single culture in the world, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's more a question of how do we be more understanding and be open to the fact that we may not have done anything intentional to upset someone. And as long as we then respond to that and not wonder why this person hates me, maybe it's a better way to handle these things. Because I can't know every culture in the world. There was a country I went through, I can't remember which one, where I made a hand gesture, which means good job in the West, but it was taken very offensively to security at the airport.
Yeah. I love learning about all those things. I learned in cultural anthropology class in grad school.
Oh,
There's a culture.
wonderful.
There is some tribe in Africa where they're constantly killing each other, and this is, you know, in the 1700s. And
Yes.
they learned over time that when you get nervous right before you're going to kill your neighbor, your parasympathetic system shuts down. And so basically you get dry mouth. You know, you're not, if
Yes.
anyone's ever given a public speech, you know what it's like to get dry mouth. And so the cultural norm was when you walk over to your neighbor's house, you get as much spit as you can in your mouth and you spit on the floor and of your neighbor's house. And that is an indication that you're not there to kill them because you have enough
I
spit
love that
to be
story.
able to land on the floor. And I'm like, I love that culture, that like, you know, the domain of sort of relevance around that and how they develop that belief around stress and physiology and killing your neighbor. I love stuff like that.